No one thought a basketball could lead her here. No one thought a jump shot legend would end up on a fairway under the early sun, surrounded by some of the best golfers on earth. Yet there she was, Caitlin Clark, standing at the tee box, a golf club in hand instead of ball, and an entire crowd holding its breath. The hour was early, the air still cool, but the energy felt electric. This wasn't just another celebrity appearance. This was the day Caitlin Clark shattered the idea that her talent had limits. The first thing you noticed wasn't the camera flashes or the banners. It was the silence, that anticipatory, spine-tingling hush that only happens right before history decides to happen. Clark adjusted her stance, exhaled, and looked down the fairway like she'd been doing it her whole life. Reporters who covered her from her college days to her rookie season in the WNBA were speechless. How does someone who's conquered one sport so completely look so comfortable starting over? That was the question everyone was asking, and within seconds she answered it. Her first drive wasn't just powerful, it was poetic. The kind of shot that cuts through the air like a promise. The ball soared straight and true, landing with a satisfying thud that made the crowd erupt. Even golf veterans exchanged stunned looks. This wasn't a lucky swing. This was control, grace, and instinct, all rolled into one moment. In that instant, Caitlin Clark didn't just join the world of golf. She announced herself as a force that no single sport could contain. By 7 a.m., the stands were overflowing. People lined up before sunrise, some wearing fever jerseys, others holding handmade signs that said things like Caitlin's new court. Every swing, every step she took down that fairway carried the weight of expectation. Yet she smiled through it, calm, easy, genuine, the same calm that she's shown after hitting logo threes in packed arenas. But now, it was on grass instead of hardwood. And somehow, that made it even more astonishing. The golf world had seen celebrity guests before. Actors, athletes, even musicians. But none of them had ever drawn crowds like this. Golf reporters who usually spent their mornings discussing swing angles and wind speed were suddenly talking about basketball ratings and rookie highlights. Caitlin Clark had done something few thought possible. She blurred the boundaries between sports, turning golf coverage into breaking news. And the numbers didn't lie. Media outlets across the country saw spikes in viewership the moment her name appeared in their feeds. Commentators said it was like Tiger Woods' debut all over again, but this time it was coming from a basketball phenom who'd barely caught her breath from her rookie season. She wasn't just bringing fans to the game. She was bringing attention, conversation, and culture everywhere she went. She left an aftershock of curiosity. But make no mistake, Caitlin wasn't there to put on a show. She was there to compete. Paired with legends like Annika Sorenstam and Nelly Korda, she approached each hole with focus and quiet confidence. The camera zoomed in as she lined up her putts, every motion deliberate, every swing crisp. Her rhythm was smooth, her posture perfect, and her composure unshakable. Even those who'd once dismissed her as just a shooter were forced to reconsider what they thought they knew about her. It was almost eerie how easily she adapted. Golf is a game of patience and precision, not exactly what people associate with a fiery basketball star. Yet, here she was, matching the tempo of seasoned pros as if she'd been training for years. When asked about nerves, she laughed and said, "I just didn't want to hit anybody." That humble humor only made her performance more magnetic. She wasn't pretending to be perfect. She was showing that greatness doesn't need a comfort zone. Fans noticed something deeper, too. Every time she smiled, waved, or signed an autograph between holes, it didn't feel like a performance. It felt like gratitude. She carried the same aura she had in college, approachable but untouchable, humble but unstoppable. People in the crowd whispered that watching her felt like witnessing the start of something bigger, like the rise of an athlete who refuses to be defined by lines, courts, or expectations. As the sun climbed higher, the tension in the air turned into awe. Her drives grew more confident, her short game sharper, and her control over the crowd absolute. You could hear chants ripple to the gallery. "Let's go, Caitlin," and "Queen of all sports." Social media was already in chaos. Highlight clips spreading across platforms faster than anyone could repost them. Within hours, hashtags like #CaitlinOnTheGreen and #ClarkEffect were trending worldwide. Analysts who once argued about her turnover rates or rookie mistakes were suddenly dissecting her swing mechanics. "She's got natural torque," one golf commentator said. "Her form is absurdly balanced for a beginner." Another called her a generational athlete in real time. The thing is, Caitlin didn't need to say a word. The ball spoke for her, and it spoke loudly. The impact went far beyond the course. Her appearance brought an influx of younger viewers to golf coverage, people who had never watched the tournament before. Some were curious, others were inspired, but all were watching. And that's when people realized this wasn't just a crossover moment, it was a cultural reset. Caitlin Clark was showing the world that women's sports didn't have to stay in separate lanes to thrive. They could converge, collide, and evolve just like she did. Behind the applause, though, there was a ripple of unease among her critics. For months, certain voices had tried to undermine her success in the WNBA, saying she was overhyped, too privileged, too spotlighted. But how do you criticize someone who keeps breaking molds? Her performance on the course didn't just silence those voices. It rewrote their scripts. Because when you dominate a sport you don't even play professionally, people stop talking about luck. They start talking about legacy. Even her rivals, Angel Reese, Aya Wilson, and others, couldn't ignore the noise. The rivalry that once lived entirely on the hardwood was now following Caitlin onto new ground. Reese had positioned herself as a heel, the outspoken foil to Clark's quiet precision. But when the highlights rolled, there was no villain, no controversy, just Caitlin shining under pressure. Her excellence spoke louder than any feud ever could. And it wasn't just about the shots. It was about how she carried herself. Between holes, she took time to interact with fans, exchange words with her golf partners, and even share laughs. That authenticity, the mix of focus and friendliness, reminded everyone why her appeal had always been universal. She wasn't trying to be better than everyone else. She was trying to be better than yesterday's version of herself. As the tournament went on, something remarkable happened. The golf veterans began to study her approach, not as a novelty, but as a case study in mental toughness. One analyst said, "You can see the basketball mindset in her pre-shot routine. The visualization, the calm breathing. She's treating this like a free throw." Another noted how she analyzed each hole like a point guard reading the defense. The crossover wasn't just physical, it was psychological. Caitlin was importing an athlete's discipline into a golfer's world and excelling. By midday, golf fans were on their feet after nearly every swing. Some couldn't believe what they were seeing. Others just stood silently, watching an athlete rewrite what was possible. One spectator summed it up perfectly. "She's doing to golf what she did to women's basketball, making everyone pay attention." Meanwhile, networks scrambled to expand their coverage. ESPN added segments, podcasts recorded emergency episodes, and commentators flooded timelines with praise. Caitlin Clark isn't visiting golf. One headline read, "She's conquering it." That word, conquering, stuck. Because it wasn't just about winning or stats. It was about the statement she was making without ever needing to say it aloud. That greatness translates. Talent transfers. Confidence crosses borders. And when you combine them all, you get moments like this, the kind that rewrite what we think an athlete can be. And then came the drive that sealed it. One perfect swing. The kind of motion so fluid it looked choreographed. The ball sliced through the air like lightning, disappearing against the blue before landing exactly where she wanted it. The crowd gasped and exploded. Phones shot up. Commentators lost their composure. It was, as one reporter put it, the shot of the day, maybe the shot of the year. In that moment, Caitlin Clark didn't just make a great play. She made a memory. Word began to spread that she'd quietly set a course record for accuracy among celebrity participants. The news hit social media like wildfire. Headlines called it the Caitlin Clark Golf Revolution. Some claimed she'd already received invitations for future tournaments. Suddenly, every sports desk in America had the same headline template. Caitlin Clark does it again. Yet, through all the noise, she remained humble. When interviewed afterward, she smiled shyly and said she just wanted to have fun. But anyone watching knew it wasn't that simple. Fun is what ordinary people call it when extraordinary talent makes hard things look effortless. By the afternoon, fans were already comparing her composure to that of legendary golfers. One analyst said, "She's got Annika's calm, Tiger's focus, and her own unique fire." Another went further. If she ever decided to take golf seriously, she'd have sponsors fighting over her tomorrow. Those weren't exaggerations. That was respect, and respect in sports is never given. It's earned one swing at a time. The ripple effect reached back to the WNBA. Commentators began asking what this meant for her next season. Would this golf spotlight distract her or strengthen her? Most agreed it was the latter. Her ability to handle pressure in a new environment proved her mental fortitude was second to none. If she could face down a packed gallery with cameras rolling and no safety net, then stepping onto a basketball court would feel like home. Meanwhile, her rivals watched quietly. Angel Reese and Aya Wilson, both known for their confidence, couldn't help but see the headlines stacking up. Clark's presence was overshadowing every narrative they tried to build. The media wasn't talking about controversy anymore. They were talking about capability. And in sports, capability always wins. Fans, however, saw it as something bigger than rivalry. To them, Caitlin Clark represented possibility, the idea that women athletes don't have to stay confined to one image or one sport. She was expanding what success looked like, not by demanding attention, but by earning it, swing by swing, smile by smile, moment by moment. The reaction online was overwhelming. Comment sections overflowed with admiration. She's not just an athlete, she's an era, one user wrote. Everything she touches turns into headlines, said another. Clips of her perfect putt spread across TikTok, pulling millions of views within hours. Even golf legends publicly congratulated her. One tweet read, "The future of athletic excellence just hit the fairway." And that's when it hit people. Caitlin Clark wasn't just breaking a golf record. She was breaking through the invisible ceiling that separates sports from culture. She was no longer just a WNBA player or even a women's basketball icon. She was something rarer, a transcendent athlete, the kind who moves entire audiences, regardless of game being played. By evening, as the sun began to set, the crowd followed her to the final hole. The energy was feverish. Every eye was fixed on her. As she lined up for her final putt, a hush fell once again. Then, with one smooth stroke, the ball rolled perfectly into the cup. The cheers that followed were deafening. Golfers high-fived, fans jumped, cameras flashed, and somewhere in that eruption, you could feel it, the collective understanding that this was more than a highlight. This was history. When reporters asked her afterward about the experience, she gave the kind of answer that only deepened her legend. "I just try to be myself," she said. "Whether it's basketball or golf, I love to compete. That's all it is." But everyone watching knew it wasn't all it is. It was everything. It was a demonstration of how passion, when paired with discipline, can move mountains, or in this case, move golf balls into impossible places. In the days that followed, the world couldn't stop talking. Golf analysts replayed her drives in slow motion. Basketball pundits discussed her off-season focus. Marketing experts talked about her cross-sport potential. She'd managed to turn a simple charity event into one of the most talked-about moments of the year. Even those who had spent months criticizing her in the WNBA had to concede. Caitlin Clark wasn't going anywhere. In fact, she was just getting started. The performance didn't just elevate her profile, it elevated the sports themselves. Golf's viewership saw a bump in demographics that had long felt disconnected from the game. Young girls, especially, began sharing videos of themselves trying to imitate her stance, her follow-through, her composure. She was inspiring across disciplines, proving that greatness doesn't have a gender or a genre. It's just greatness. But perhaps the most powerful part of the day wasn't the applause or the headlines. It was a realization spreading across the crowd that they were witnessing something rare, authenticity. In a world obsessed with branding and algorithms, Caitlin Clark's rise felt human, real, grounded. She wasn't chasing approval. She was chasing improvement. And that, ironically, is what made her so beloved. For her critics, it was a sobering moment. The narrative they built around her, that she was a media creation, overhyped, overcovered, dissolved the moment she stepped onto the course. Because there's no script for excellence. You can't fake poise or manufacture passion. You either have it or you don't. And Caitlin Clark, from that first tee shot onward, proved she had it in abundance. The following week, sports analysts started calling her the modern-day crossover athlete, the kind of figure who redefines expectations every time she shows up. "She's changing the math," one commentator said. "You can't box her in not by sport, not by style, not by stereotype." And that was the truth. Caitlin Clark was teaching the sports world a new equation. That talent multiplies wherever it's nurtured. As she reflected on the experience, she hinted at what drives her. "I like to challenge myself," she said during a brief interview. "That's where I grow." That statement summed up her entire career. Growth through discomfort, strength through humility, the very traits that took her from college dominance to professional stardom, now carrying her into uncharted territory. Her golf success wasn't a detour. It was an extension of who she is, someone who refuses to stop evolving. And as fans watched the final replay of her world record-setting performance, they weren't just clapping for a great athlete. They were clapping for what she represented progress, versatility, and the unstoppable rise of women redefining what greatness looks like. When the broadcast ended, one reporter said something that echoed across social media. Caitlin Clark doesn't just play sports, she expands them. That's the legacy she's building. One swing, one shot, one moment at a time. Whether it's the roar of a basketball crowd or the quiet gasp of a golf gallery, she commands the same energy, the same connection, the same fire. And as the camera faded out on her smile, one thing was undeniable. Caitlin Clark didn't just conquer court, she conquered the course. And in doing so, she proved that real greatness doesn't stay in one lane. It creates its own.